You want to buy a warehouse, a big gray box outside the city, close to a highway. Trucks moving in, trucks moving out. A company signs the lease. They store their products inside, and every month, the rent arrives. No shoppers to attract, no apartment tenants calling about a leaking sink, no luxury lobby, no emotional buyer walking through the front door, just concrete, steel, loading docks, and rent. It sounds boring, and that is exactly why some of the richest real estate investors in the world love it. Because a warehouse is not really a warehouse, not in the way most people think about it. A warehouse is a physical piece of the supply chain. It is where products stop before they move again. It sits between factories and stores, between ports and cities, between e-commerce websites and your front door, between the global economy and the person waiting for a package. So when you buy a warehouse, you are not just buying walls and a roof. You are buying a position inside the movement of goods. And in logistics real estate, movement is where the money is. That is the first thing most people get wrong. They look at a warehouse and they see an empty box. An investor looks at the same building and asks a different question. How close is it to the highway? How close is it to the customer? How close is it to labor? Can trucks turn around easily? How many loading docks does it have? How tall is the ceiling? How strong is the floor? Can it handle modern logistics? Can it move product faster than the building next door? Because in this business, the building is not valuable because it is beautiful. It is valuable because it saves time. And time is what logistics companies are really paying for. Think about what happens every time you order something online. You click buy, and in your mind, the process is almost invisible. The product just appears. Maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day, maybe in a few hours. But behind that simple order is a chain of physical movement. The product may begin at a factory, then move to a port, then to a regional distribution center, then to a smaller warehouse closer to the city, then to a delivery station, then into a van, then to your door. Every stop in that chain needs real estate. Not pretty real estate, not famous real estate, functional real estate. Space where goods can be received, sorted, stored, packed, loaded, and moved again. That is why industrial real estate became one of the most important asset classes in the modern economy. Because the internet did not remove the need for physical space, it increased it. E-commerce made shopping digital, but delivery is still physical. And the more customers expect faster delivery, the more valuable the right warehouse becomes. Now this is where the business starts to get interesting, because from the outside, a warehouse may look simple, but the economics underneath it are not simple at all. Before you collect a single rent check, you need to survive the cost of buying it, building it, or repositioning it. And industrial real estate has a very different cost structure from something like apartments or retail. First, there is the land, and not all land is useful land. A cheap piece of land far from highways may look like a bargain, but if trucks need an extra 30 minutes to reach it, that cheap land may become expensive very quickly. A logistics tenant does not just ask, how much space do I get? They ask, how much time does this location save me? A warehouse near a major highway interchange, close to a large city, with access to workers, ports, rail, or airports, can be dramatically more valuable than a larger building in the wrong location. Because the tenant is not only renting square footage, they are renting access. Access to roads, access to customers, access to labor, access to speed. Then there is the building itself. A modern warehouse is not just a roof over inventory. It needs clear height. That means how high the usable space is inside the building. Older warehouses may have low ceilings. Modern logistics tenants often want high ceilings because higher ceilings allow them to stack more goods vertically. And when a tenant can store more product in the same footprint, that building becomes more productive. A warehouse also needs loading docks. This is where trucks back up to the building. Too few docks, and trucks wait. Trucks waiting means drivers waiting. Drivers waiting means money being wasted. So a building with more dock doors, better truck access, and better circulation can often command stronger rent. Then there's the truck court. This is the open, paved space where trucks turn, park, reverse, and line up. To someone driving past, it may look like wasted, empty concrete. But to a logistics operator, that concrete can be the difference between a smooth operation and a daily traffic jam. The floor matters too. The spacing of the columns matters, the fire system matters, the power capacity matters, the roof matters, the parking matters, the zoning matters, even the shape of the building matters. A warehouse can be large, but still functionally weak. And a smaller warehouse in the right location, with the right specifications, can be far more valuable. That is one of the strange lessons of industrial real estate. Size is not the same thing as value. Usefulness is value. Now let's say you have the right building. Good location, strong access, modern specifications. A tenant wants the space. How does the warehouse actually make money? The first layer is base rent. This is the simplest part. The tenant pays a fixed amount for the space, usually priced per square foot per year. If a company leases 100,000 square feet and the rent is priced at $10 per square foot per year, that is $1 million in annual base rent. Before expenses, before debt, before anything else. That is the basic income engine. But the real business gets more interesting when you look at the lease structure. Many industrial leases are long-term. A tenant might sign for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, sometimes longer. That matters because the landlord gets more predictable income. And in real estate, predictable income is extremely valuable. An apartment tenant may leave after 1 year. A retail tenant may struggle if foot traffic falls. But a logistics tenant that has spent millions setting up inside a warehouse does not move casually. They may install racking systems, conveyor systems, cold storage equipment, security systems, automation, office build-outs, custom loading setups. Once the operation is inside the building, leaving becomes expensive. That gives the landlord a powerful advantage. Not because the tenant is trapped, but because the building has become part of the tenant's operation. That is one of the quiet strengths of industrial real estate. The best tenants do not just occupy the space, they build their business around it. Then there are rent escalations. A warehouse lease may include a scheduled rent increase every year, maybe 2%, maybe 3%, maybe tied to inflation. So the landlord's income can rise over time without needing to find a new tenant. This is one reason investors like the asset class. The income is not always flat. A good lease can grow. Then there is the second layer of money, expenses, or more specifically, who pays them. In many industrial properties, the tenant signs what is known as a triple net lease. That usually means the tenant pays the rent, but also takes responsibility for many of the property's operating expenses. Property taxes, insurance, maintenance, sometimes repairs, sometimes utilities. This is very different from an apartment building, where the landlord is often responsible for a much larger share of the day-to-day operating burden. In a well-structured industrial lease, the landlord may own the building, collect rent, and pass many property-level costs through to the tenant. That does not mean the landlord has no risk. The roof still matters. The structure still matters. Capital expenses still matter. But the lease structure can make the income cleaner, more predictable, and easier to understand. That is why institutional investors love it. They are not just buying a building, they are buying a stream of contracted income. And the quality of that income depends heavily on the tenant. A warehouse leased to a strong national logistics company, a major retailer, a food distributor, or a creditworthy e-commerce operator is very different from a warehouse leased to a small company with weak financials. The building may be identical. The rent may even be similar, but the risk is not the same. In industrial real estate, the tenant is part of the asset. A great building with a weak tenant can still become a problem. A strong tenant with a long lease can make the same building far more valuable. This is where valuations start to make sense. When investors buy industrial properties, they are often buying the net operating income. That means the income left after operating expenses before debt payments and taxes. The higher and safer that income is, the more investors are willing to pay. If a warehouse produces $1 million in annual net operating income, and investors in that market are willing to accept a 5% return on the purchase price, that property could be valued around $20 million, because $1 million is 5% of $20 million. But if investors think the income is risky, or interest rates rise, or the tenant may leave, they may demand a higher return, maybe 7%. At a 7% return, that same $1 million of income would support a value closer to $14.3 million. Same building, same rent, very different value. Why? Because real estate value is not only about income. It is about how safe people believe that income is. This is one of the most important lessons in all of commercial real estate. A building does not become valuable just because it earns money. It becomes valuable because investors trust the money will keep coming. Now, from the outside, industrial real estate can look safer than other property types. And in many ways, it can be. People always need goods. Companies always need storage. Supply chains always need physical space. But this is where many new investors become careless. They hear warehouse and they think safe. But a warehouse can fail. And when it fails, it usually fails for reasons that were visible from the beginning. The first major risk is location. Not location in the emotional sense, not beautiful views, not a prestigious address, but logistics location. Can trucks reach it easily? Is it close enough to the customers? Is it close enough to labor? Are there road restrictions? Is there traffic congestion? Is it too far from the port? Too far from the airport? Too far from the city? In residential real estate, people pay for lifestyle. In logistics real estate, companies pay for efficiency. And if the location creates inefficiency, the building loses power. The second risk is obsolescence. This is when a building still exists, but no longer fits what the market wants. Maybe the ceilings are too low. Maybe the dock doors are too few. Maybe the floor cannot support modern racking. Maybe the truck court is too shallow. Maybe the power is too weak. Maybe the layout was designed for an older type of business. The building may look fine, it may even be occupied, but when the tenant leaves, the landlord discovers the truth. The next generation of tenants does not want it. That is one of the hidden dangers in industrial real estate. A warehouse can become outdated quietly, not because it is falling apart, but because logistics has moved on. The third risk is tenant concentration. Many warehouses have only one tenant. This can be good when the tenant is strong. One tenant, one lease, one payment. Simple. But it also means if that tenant leaves, the income can go from full to zero almost overnight. An apartment building with 100 units does not become empty because one tenant moves out, but a single-tenant warehouse can. That is the trap. The income feels stable until it disappears. And replacing a large industrial tenant is not always fast. It can take months, sometimes longer. The landlord may need to offer free rent, tenant improvement money, broker fees, custom upgrades. And during that downtime, the debt payment does not stop. The property tax does not stop. The insurance does not stop. The building still has to be maintained. A vacant warehouse does not just stop earning money, it starts consuming money. The fourth risk is overbuilding. When industrial real estate becomes popular, developers rush in. They buy land, they build new warehouses. They assume demand will keep growing. And for a while, it can look like they are right. Vacancy is low, rents are rising, tenants are expanding. Investors are paying high prices. Then suddenly, too much space hits the market at the same time. Tenants have more options. Rent growth slows. Older buildings compete with newer ones. Landlords begin offering concessions. The market does not collapse overnight, it softens. And in real estate, softness is often where the pain begins. Because these assets are usually financed with debt, if you buy a warehouse with borrowed money, the loan has to be paid whether the market is strong or weak. If interest rates rise, refinancing becomes harder. If the property value falls, the owner may not be able to refinance at the same level. If the tenant leaves at the wrong time, the entire investment can become stressed very quickly. That is why industrial real estate is not just a story about buildings. It is a story about timing, debt, tenant quality, market demand, and location. Now let's talk about why warehouses became so powerful in the first place. For decades, retail real estate was built around the customer going to the product. You drove to the mall, you walked into the store, you carried the product home. The store was the final point of sale. E-commerce changed that. The customer no longer had to go to the product had to go to the customer. That one shift changed the value of real estate. The store became less important for certain categories. The warehouse became more important. The back end became the front end. The supply chain became the shopping experience. When a customer says, "This company has fast delivery," they are not just talking about the website. They are talking about logistics real estate. They are talking about inventory being placed close enough to them. They are talking about warehouses, delivery stations, truck routes, and last-mile networks. The customer may never see the building, but they feel the building every time the package arrives on time. That is why last-mile logistics became so valuable. A last-mile facility is usually closer to the final customer. It may be smaller than a huge regional distribution center, but its location can be more powerful. Because the closer the product is to the customer, the faster it can be delivered. And in modern commerce, speed is not just convenience. Speed is competition. If one company can deliver in 2 days, another wants to deliver tomorrow. If one can deliver tomorrow, another wants to deliver today. And the only way to make that possible is to place inventory closer and closer to demand. That means more pressure on urban and suburban industrial space, more demand for infill locations, more value for old industrial land near major population centers. This is why some ugly buildings in unattractive areas become incredibly valuable, because they sit exactly where the supply chain needs them. A luxury apartment building sells lifestyle, a shopping mall sells foot traffic, an office building sells productivity, a warehouse sells movement, and movement is now one of the most valuable things in the economy. But not every warehouse is part of the same story. There are different types of logistics real estate, and each one has its own economics. A bulk distribution center is massive, often located outside the city, designed to receive huge volumes of goods and move them across a region. These buildings need scale, large sites, high ceilings, trailer parking, highway access. A last-mile facility is different. It may be smaller, older, and closer to dense population. Its value comes from proximity, not just size. A company may pay more per square foot for a smaller building if that building helps them reach customers faster. Cold storage is different again. These are facilities built to keep food, pharmaceuticals, or other temperature-sensitive goods cold or frozen. They are expensive to build, expensive to operate, technically complex, and harder to replace. That complexity can make them risky, but it can also make them valuable. Because if a tenant needs cold storage, a normal warehouse will not work. The building must perform a specific function, and specialized function can create pricing power. Then there are manufacturing facilities, flex industrial spaces, truck terminals, port warehouses, airport cargo facilities. Each one looks similar to outsiders, but each one serves a different role in the economy. That is why the best industrial real estate investors do not just ask, how big is the building? They ask, what job does this building perform? Because the job of the building determines the demand, and the demand determines the rent. Now imagine two warehouses, same size, same city, same construction quality. But one is 20 minutes closer to a major port, with better highway access and stronger truck circulation. The other is cheaper, but trucks lose time getting in and out. On paper, the cheaper building may look like the better deal. But for the tenant, every extra minute has a cost. Fuel, driver hours, missed delivery windows, lower route efficiency, more operational stress. Over one day, that difference may look small. Over 1 year, across hundreds or thousands of truck movements, it can become enormous. That is why logistics companies often pay premium rent for the right location. Not because they are careless with money, because the rent is cheaper than the inefficiency. The rent is not the cost. The wrong location is the cost. So does owning warehouses actually work as a business? The honest answer is yes, but only when the asset is useful, the tenant is strong, the lease is well structured, the debt is manageable, and the location continues to matter. In the good version, you own a modern warehouse near a major logistics corridor. The tenant is financially strong, the lease is long-term, the rent grows every year. Many expenses are passed through, demand in the market is healthy, and the building becomes more valuable over time because more companies want access to that location. That is the version investors dream about. Stable income, low vacancy, growing rent, long leases. A tenant that treats the building as essential infrastructure. But in the bad version, the same warehouse becomes a burden. The tenant leaves. The building is too old for the next operator. The location is not strong enough to attract better demand. The landlord has to spend millions upgrading the property. The loan still needs to be paid. The market softens. Newer buildings nearby offer better space. And suddenly, the boring box that looked safe becomes a very expensive problem. This is the truth most people miss. Industrial real estate is not safe because it is simple. It is safe only when the building is useful to the economy. A warehouse does not create wealth just because it exists. It creates wealth when it sits in the right place, serves the right function, holds the right tenant, and helps goods move faster than they could without it. That is why some industrial buildings become trophy assets, while others become obsolete boxes of concrete. The difference is not always visible from the road, but it is visible in the economics. So the next time you pass a warehouse outside the city, do not just see a plain gray building. See a checkpoint in the economy, a silent part of the delivery promise, a place where inventory becomes speed, where location becomes income, where concrete becomes cash flow. Because the most valuable real estate is not always the most beautiful. Sometimes, it is the real estate that makes everything else move. And that is how warehouses actually make money.